Hi, it's Tansel here. Now, today I want to talk to you a little bit about the memory effectiveness. Now, what does this mean? There's a lot of people out there that do memory training and are looking at techniques to be able to improve their memory. But what happens is that when they get into learning this sort of stuff, they just do the techniques and they don't necessarily remember a lot better. So, what do I mean by that? What happens is that when you're using the techniques, you get really good at creating images, you get really good at encoding, and eventually you will improve your memory just by working at it. But what happens is that if you don't train effectively, if you don't memorize effectively, you will still forget. Now, I experienced this when I first entered the memory competitions. For 6 years in a row, I kept using the memory techniques because A, they did work, and B, they work for everyone else. Okay, so that's what I did. However, I kept coming second in Australia, and one year I came fourth, but I kept doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result, right? Definition of insanity. And what happened after that was I felt frustrated. And I thought to myself, well, I'm using these techniques, I'm memorizing, right? What's going on? Am my stories really weak? There has to be some sort of an issue. So when I delved in deeper, I realized that it wasn't so much the memory techniques that was holding me back because the techniques work, right? Techniques are just like folders on your computer, right? You're not going to memorize, you're not going to remember thousands of files on your computer, but you know where they're stored, right? In which folder, mostly. So this is the same thing with memorization, right? The storage space is, doesn't really matter that much. It's how you memorize into that storage space, right? And this is where the effectiveness comes in. So what I was doing, I was not focusing on the memorization into those folders. I was just focusing on retrieving from those folders because I know that once you put that information in the folder, most of the times you're going to get it right, which is true. But if you want to get it right every single time, you have to have a different approach. And that approach is improving your memorization process. What does this look like? Improving a memorization process is different from recall. Memorization and recall are two separate things. Recall is what you remember from, and memorization is the process needed to memorize that bit of information, to put that into the storage location in your brain. And this is the part that gets a lot of people because when you learn memory techniques, not much is actually talked about the memorization process. It's mostly about using a memory palace or linking an association or things like being able to retrieve a large amount of data. That's what memory techniques are usually all about. However, one part did sort of get me in Tony Buzan's book, Use Your Memory. And he wrote a little section on an acronym called SMASH and SCOPE. And I found this extremely valuable. I first sort of skimmed over it a bit. I thought, okay, this is great. It's fantastic. But, I sort of know how memory works and it's going to be great. So I applied a little bit and surely enough, it did help. But once I realized the true power of it, I went back to it. I thought, wow, this is unbelievable. And what happened was you could start to use these memory principles to make your memorization process a lot better. And if you make your memorization process a lot better, guess what's going to happen? Your recall process is going to improve. So just by working on memorization and being effective in your memorization, your recall is not only going to improve, but you're going to be a better memorizer. You're going to be more efficient as well. So you'll be a lot quicker. So at the start, things take a lot longer. Of course, when you're trying to memorize something, add story, add more detail, yes, things are going to, take a lot longer. But at the same token, if you do it right, that duration will get less and less and less and less every time. That's why these people that are top of the game at the moment, they're so quick because they've trained for many, many, many hours on making these effective stories even quicker, right? Because what generally happens is if you make a quick story, there's not much effectiveness in there because you're not adding a lot of detail. So the trick is to learn these memorization processes, to use the smash and scope principles, right? And that's essentially using your senses and color and imagination, all of that sort of stuff. That's what I mean, right? If you want to read more about smash and scope, definitely check out Tony Buzan's Use Your Memory book. I've also written about it in my own books as well. I've called it the Visualization, Association, Imagination, so the VI principle. Ultimately, it's all the same thing. You want to be able to memorize effectively. So what are some of the tricks to be able to do that? Now, I mentioned using a senses, using color, all of that stuff. But what generally works for me is something that encompasses everything, and that's using your imagination. A lot of people starting memory know this already. Okay, we understand using our imagination, but it doesn't mean seeing a static image, right? If I said earphones, right? If I said earphones, don't just visualize earphones inside your head, right? You have to be able to touch and feel the earphones. You have to be able to put them in your ear. What does it feel like? Is there any music playing? Do you get the picture? So you have to be able to create an experience. That's what we remember. We remember the experience. And if you add emotion on top of that, you're going to the next level, right? So creating an image is not enough. That's what I was doing for the memory competitions in my first 6 years. I was just creating images and pop them in the locations. I was memorizing 95%, so it works, but that 5% I needed to win, it didn't let me. So once I started creating experience with the images inside my head, that's when I started getting a lot more powerful in my recall, a lot more powerful in my overall memory as well. So how do we also apply this to our daily life? I mean, we're not just talking about earphones here. What if someone said something to you? What if they gave you an instruction? Look, John, can you please, go down to the shop and get me some bread, right? What are you going to do? So instead of just visualizing bread inside your head and going to the shop, well, again, we can use our imagination. We can picture the bread really big, like 10 foot tall, right? Maybe it's soft. Maybe you're jumping in it like a jumping castle. You're hitting yourself into the bread, all the way to the shop. And maybe the shop's door is full of bread and you have to run through it. Now, these are just silly examples, but it's what sticks in the brain. Okay, now how would that make you feel if you were to, smash through a piece of 10-foot bread, right? Add some feeling on there as well. Now you're on your way. Okay, so my listening skills were absolutely terrible right before I started memory. And the more I started creating this experience, the smash and scope, the more I started actually remembering. And that's what happened when I started coaching as well. I was a really bad listener, but the reason why I got into coaching was not just to help people, but to improve my listening skills because I was terrible. And the more I listened, the more I visualized scenarios, the more I used my imagination, right? The more I pictured helping people out. So if someone would come to me and said, look, Tansel, I want to be able to remember names better, right? I'd visualize this person having extreme difficulties trying to remember names, being embarrassed, and me feeling that embarrassment with them. Because if I can share that pain, I can help them as well, right? And I can also share that success once they've achieved that success, which is amazing, which is, why I've been coaching for the last 20 years. It's not because I'm good at it or anything. It's because I keep seeing people using these skills to change their lives. And it's not just about being able to remember. It's improving confidence. It's improving a set of skills. It's learning whatever they want. Anytime. I mean, it's an amazing time to be alive. So if you've come across this video, please do feel free to like, share, subscribe to the channel, because it really does not only help me out, but helps everyone else as well see this sort of stuff and benefit from these techniques. To sum it all up, you need to be able to use your imagination and use emotion, use feeling to be able to memorize a lot more effectively. Because if you can do that, you'll take your memorization up to another level. You'll learn a lot better. You will achieve things that you've probably never achieved before, just like I have, because what happened was that after that sixth year, when I went and applied these principles, I won every single memory event that I entered. Right? And that was 4 years in a row when I entered. So the change for me was absolutely huge. I went from making little mistakes, right, to memorizing everything perfectly. Right? Now, obviously, not everyone is perfect, but in competition, you have to be perfect because they give you things like numbers and playing cards, and these things, they don't come to you in 5 or 10 cards or numbers. We get numbers in rows of 40 digits to memorize, and if we make one mistake, we don't get 39 out of 40. We get 20 out of 40 if we make one mistake, and two mistakes is zero. So we have to be effective. And what's the best way to be effective? Work on that memorization process, because that's going to help you. Now, I'm not just saying this for competitors or people that want to compete. This is for everyone, right? This is for everyone wanting to improve your memory. And if you're just getting into memory techniques, work on your memorization. Not just recall, but memorization. Make the stories up. Make them colorful. Use your imagination. Right? Make them positive, make them negative, right? Look up the Smash and Scope, because it's extremely powerful stuff. It helped me on a lot of areas as well in my life, in terms of, like I mentioned, work, daily life, even with my kids, right? I can give them messages and they're not listening to me or hearing them. But if I say them in a memorable way, if I attach a story in there that'll interest them, they'll pick up like this. The ears will pick up like, what'd you say? So it works in so many different areas using these skills. So it's not just about memorization, it's making things memorable. That's what it's about, making things memorable. So not just being able to remember, but you can be a marketer, you can be a salesperson, you can be in communications, right? So many areas you can use these skills. So the takeaway from this video is use your imagination to be able to make your memory more memorable and improve your recall overall. So hopefully that's helped you. And if you have any questions, feel free to comment down below or message me on my website, and I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.